20 years, and still no success, no trophy. Well, one trophy, but nothing valuable to show from it. As Giorgio Chiellini said, this is the history of the Tottenham. And as Antonio Conte showed this week, he has had enough. Welcome back to One Kick from Glory. We're going to start off with that wonderful topic of Antonio Conte. I'm joined with Craig.
Yeah.
And Matthew and Markus is going to join us a bit later, talk all things Liverpool. But let's start off with Antonio Conte and his marvellous rant about the history of the Tottenham. I'm going to start with you, Matthew, as the man who has had him as a manager, who has understood exactly what he's all about and how he likes to do things. How did you take that news when you read it and saw it online?
Somebody wants a way out. I think somebody is not happy with just the lack of ambition, the lack of fire, the lack of fight, and it's almost like he's painting away to like, please let me out. It's like a very subtle kind of read between the lines, escape letter with his team. I mean, they were like, you're playing the bottle, shows what I know about playing a bottom team and not getting a result that you want. The difference is that you scored 3 more goals than we did. So I don't know what happened with you. How you guys screwed that up in a better position that we are, I'll never know. This is the worst time to play a relegation team because all of them are now going to be fighting. You know, we see it, if you look at the table from 12th to the bottom, it's four points between all of them. 4 points. This is not going to be this ain't going to end soon. We reckon this could go down to the wire. And I think that results like that have just really, against them, against Wolves, and then, playing other teams in that kind of ilk have really gone against them. And he's just, I think he's almost like he's reached his tether. He's used to winning. He's used to a lot of support. He's used to, showing them a little bit of, he's a passionate guy. He's Italian, he's a passionate guy. And he just feels like this, it's almost as if they want to be riding on this where they are now. They're content with what they've got. Unfortunately, he's not content with that. He's used to winning. He's used to competing. Premier League, Serie A's, international team. He was in a European final, but 2-3 years ago. And Tottenham was so far away from that. They got knocked out over one of the most boring draws in the history of boring draws of AC Milan. Another Italian team. And I think, from that point, he can't take it anymore. Saying Tottenham, you might be happy with this kind of life, but I've got goals, I've got dreams, I want to grow wings, I want to go. So I think he's just like, they're too content with this, but he's not.
Yeah, it does feel like he's had enough, and it's the beginning of the end.
Yeah, look, I think on a very serious level, Antonio Conte has gone through a lot in this last period of his life, and the loss of 3 very important footballing figures in his journey, along with that operation that he had recently. I think the operation, and this is just me making some level of assumption, but it was an opportunity for him to be back in Italy. And we talk quite a lot about how Italian managers, when they leave Italy, have this deep yearning to be back home. And there's something about Italian culture, maybe more than any other culture, that kind of has this desire to be around their own, in their own place, with their own culture and feelings and vibe. And I think Conte got to experience that during the operation, and I think what you saw was a collection of a lot of frustration, a lot of things that was going on, and someone who is currently not clearly overly stable, and needs some time to rest and grieve and process and deal with things that are going on in his life, which you don't get when you're running a big football club, and are a main manager of a Premier League club with big expectations, fighting for top 4. So I feel for the players a little bit. I think that they will receive the kind of wrath, but at the same time, if it was any other person in any other situation, we'd say Tottenham dropped a 2-goal lead against the Southampton team that have basically been in the bottom 3 all season. So again, the result is not good enough. But I think just the nature and the way it came across made it a little difficult for people to take. I heard Højbjerg came out this week and said that there needed to be more context added to the manager's comments, and I think you're seeing a lot of different things going going on. But my overarching conclusion with Spurs is that, sometimes things don't work out. More often than not, it seems to be the case for Tottenham. But, this is not working out, and it's a marriage that is dying. And the quicker them divorce papers are signed and, they hook up with their old partner, the better it'll be for Tottenham, I think.
No, I agree. I just think it doesn't work. And I mean, Hobio coming out and saying what he had to say about context. I'm sorry, he's not even been that great this season. He's been as inconsistent as the other players. I think he shows a lot more passion. I think he does care. I don't rate him that highly, but I have to say I've been impressed with some of his performances this season. But he's not been doing 7 out of 10s every week. He's had some 4 out of 10s. He's had some 8 out of 10s. But on the whole, he's been very average. So for him to want context, does he want context to go around and say, Højbjerg, this game, you were crap. Richarlison, most of the season, you've been crap. Like, what do they really want? I think that what really upset him, because you think about the games he's missed, they've played well without him, with the assistant running the show. The main man's back, and then they went 3-1 up. And then to throw that away against bottom of the table, it's just not acceptable. I think that's the thing is, you can put context into it, emotions run high, Southampton got the bounce with the goal, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't. And I remember when Arsenal had this against Newcastle a good number of years ago with the 4-4. We were 4-0 up at half time. What are we doing drawing 4-4? It doesn't matter. There's no context you can give to a game. I don't care how buoyant the crowd is. I don't care how, players react to the smell of blood. You just get the result. And Tottenham, once Southampton made it 3-2, they should have all just sat back behind the bloody ball and defended with their lives. And I think that's probably what he was frustrated about. It's like, we've given them goals here. And I feel for him, but at the same time, because of his comments about 20 years no trophy, what have they got to show for it? I personally think what Tottenham should do, rather than do the easy thing, which is sack him or fire him for misconduct, I think they should actually own it and say, you know what, in light of what Antonio Conte said, we're making some adjustments to how we manage things going forward. I think they should own it, because that would send a massive signal to the players. One, you can't just down tools anymore and get your own way. We're not just going to chop and change managers. You did it with Nuno. You did it with Poch to start off with. He reached Champions League final, and then the following season you gave up on him. You did it with Nuno because you didn't like him, didn't like what he was trying to do. And then Conte, and then Mourinho, you barely gave him what, he tried, but he wasn't enough. And now you got Conte in, and it's like you're doing the same thing. That would tell the players, your player power is dead. You don't have control anymore, and we're going to do things differently. And I think that might start to see a shift in mentality. But they know, we'll just coast through. We'll get top 4, top 5, top 6. That will do European football next season, and we'll carry on. But ultimately, for me, I think, it's as an Arsenal fan, it's great to watch. But at the end of the day, I think when he talks about heart and fight, I feel like thinly veiled within that. If they were to fire him, I would love him to come out and say, and for players like Harry Kane, if you have ambition in your career, you should leave in the summer. I would love him to say it, because I feel like hidden in the subtext of all of that is this club for 20 years is not a winning place. And you, Kane, you, son, if you believe you're winners, you got to move on.
No, absolutely. The culture is not a winning culture. They don't know what it is to win, and they can't get across the line. And for all that it's worth, Kane performs like a winner 90% of the time, but when it's actually mattered at Spurs, has not really shown up. Granted, he was injured in that Champions League final and probably shouldn't have ever played, but I think Kane is an exceptional footballer who, if he was in a team that had winning mentality, would contribute an incredible amount. But Harry Kane's greatest season, where he got top goals and top assists, I think led Tottenham to a 6th or 7th place finish. Ultimately you can't do it on its own, and Son was that example last season. But Kane performed relatively well, but Son was exceptional, and even Tottenham's 2 best players on good form for an entire season wasn't quite enough to really make a dent. And I know Tottenham fans get really frustrated because, with Mourinho, his attitude was like, look, I'm a winner, and, I can't even win anything here. But it's starting to look quite ominous when, they've had managers of the quality of Pochettino, Mourinho, and then Conte, and still haven't won anything.
You, Craig, when you saw that news, after laughing and kind of enjoying the hubris behind all of that, like, how did you kind of take that in, and what do you think now Tottenham need to do moving forward?
Well, to be honest with you, the owners backed him. The owners backed him with a lot of money in the summer. He spent an awful lot of money. He spent a lot of money on Richarlison. Has been a flop. Hasn't reduced the goals. Did well in the World Cup. Hasn't done anything for Tottenham. Always getting injured. In January, he complained he needed 2 players. The owner backed him with 2 players. So he can't complain and say that the owners are not backed him. The owners have backed him. So it's up to him. As expressions will say, they play fossil football. 5 at the back and no attack. No, all jokes aside, he's a man. He's not a long-term manager. He's a 1 or 2 year manager. He goes in there for 1 or 2 seasons, wins trophies, and then he leaves. He's not a long-term manager. I think if Tottenham are looking for a manager again to replace him, they might have to go back to Pochettino. Cause I don't see any managers available that they could get right now. And will the owners want to spend money? The owners have to sell players in the summer to rebuild. And will Harry Kane stay at the club? I don't think so, because I know he's a loyal Tottenham guy and he broke the record recently, but he must have reached a stage in his life. He's 29 years old, London boy, wants to win trophies. And I know he's a loyal guy, but when it comes down to it, like, you have to win. End of the day, when you, as a professional footballer, any footballer, amateur or professional, you want to win trophies. You don't want to end your career and then say, "What did you win? The Audi Cup." So you want to win. So you want to win trophies. You know what I mean? So end of the day, you have to weigh it up. Like if a big club comes in with an offer, the owner has to think about it in the summer. Should I take that offer? He's not gonna get any more. He's not gonna get any big money for Harry Kane after 30 anyway. So he has to think, this might be his last big contract he gets if he re-signs at Tottenham or he goes to another club. This will be his last big contract he'll get, because once he gets 30, 31, 32, he won't really get that big contract again, I don't think. So I feel that it's a mess. The club's in a mess.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer club. But yeah, it's a strange one, because, when I remember the Athletic did like a series of articles about Tottenham and Arsenal for this coming season, and there was all this chat about how Tottenham are going to be far and ahead of Arsenal, and Arsenal are going to just be drifting behind them and be looking up at them at the summit of the Premier League. And look where we are now. Who's really looking up? Who really is adrift? Who looks like the idea of winning a Premier League trophy is more likely that Michael Jackson will come back from the death than you guys win a trophy? I mean, shocking. Tottenham are really in a bad place, and I don't mind. They can keep languishing in mediocrity for as long as they want, but to kind of look at it from like a footballing perspective, I mean, when you think about the fact that they've been in the Champions League final in the last 4 years, they've made a Champions League final.
Years.
Yeah, they made a Champions League final under Pochettino. They looked like they might have, given Liverpool a tough game. They didn't in the end. Liverpool, thanks Mark and Liverpool, did a great job making sure that no emergency action was needed to prevent that game finishing. But from the highs of that, Pochettino's last season, and then the mess of Nuno not really giving him a proper chance to bed in his ideas, him not having the dressing room, and then you bring in Antonio Conte, who turned you down initially. And then to go back in for him, you know what he's like with his teams. You know what he expects. And yes, they have financially supported him, but not every signing they got was the ones he wanted. I think quite a few of them was option B and option C. Richarlison is a player he wanted, but there's other players he signed in. Perisic, there's other players that they got that wasn't on his list.
Perisic he bought from Inter.
Perisic was on his list, but there's other players that they brought in, and he had other targets that were higher up the list.
What, Emerson Royal? Did he buy Emerson Royal?
I don't think Emerson Morel was one of his players.
happened in
I
the
think
past,
they wanted their right back. Because remember, they replaced him with Pedro Porro.
He's terrible as well.
Didn't want it.
It's the history of the Tottenham, isn't it? They have their target and they don't get the one they want.
But I don't understand it. In the summer, they bought Jed Spence, and he was a good player last
Spence
season.
was not a Conte signing.
But he didn't want. Yeah,
Was
exactly.
the
He didn't
owner-
want him.
He doesn't play him.
He's out on loan now, I think.
Exactly. He didn't want him. That's the issue. It's one thing saying they have spent money, but they haven't really backed the manager with the players he wanted. But also at the same time, the manager hasn't really appreciated what he's got either. We all know with Tottenham, Kane and Son up front, deadly. Kulusevski's come in, kind of settled in. Like, I'm not going to say he's like one of them because he could always join the red and white. He's an Arsenal fan. But, Kulusevski looks good at Tottenham. Bentancur looks really good in midfield.
We got injured, yeah.
And then after that, you're looking at, well, what else is great there? You got Eric Dyer, who's hit and miss. You've got Højbjerg, who is the same. Like he might go 3 games, be a 7, 8 out of 10. Then he'll have 3 games where he's like a 2, 3 out of 10. It's just not consistent. Davinson Sanchez is right off. Christian Romero is just a car crash. He's literally sideshow Bob. You know, he Christian Romero is what the pundits thought David Luiz is. Reckless.
He's reckless.
He's reckless, and he gets away with it.
How many red cards he got this season?
The game. That's my point. David Luiz was good, but Romero is reckless, and people rate Romero highly. But when you actually watch him in the game, you think this guy, he's a walking red card. The fact he hasn't had more red cards is more of a testament to the incompetence of the referees in the country rather than his good play. So every game he's going out to take someone out. He's going in for an aggressive challenge, which, okay, I get it, it's your game, but at the end of the day, like, there needs to be some balance in what you do.
And he gets sent off against AC Milan, didn't he? And he got sent off against us, didn't he?
That's my point.
Did he?
That's my point. But that's the thing. Romero is not reliable. But then you think about the team. What's Conte's spine? Lloris is not reliable. Then the centre-backs. Who can you really look at and say of that core centre-backs, this is the guy I can depend upon? You'd think it's Romero, but like I said, the guy's a walking time bomb. Then ahead of that, you've got Højbjerg, who's actually been good this season. But again, he's inconsistent. Bentancur should be that guy, but he's injured. Then ahead of that,
Oliver Skip. It's a kid.
Oliver Skip. But then with the forward line, he's got it. So realistically, he's only really got his front 3 that he can truly depend upon, and then flip a coin, and maybe it'll be right for Højbjerg this week. And then the back 4, just pray. Whatever happens, happens. And I'm not surprised he's frustrated. And I mean, even him saying about the attitude of the players that they just don't want to win. Like, do they look like they want to win stuff? They don't seem to have that fight.
The only one I can say that looks like he wants to win every game is Harry Kane. Every time he loses, he looks very upset. But I don't see anybody else like, I don't know, Son this season has not proven to be, I think this is his worst season at Tottenham.
But even to say Harry Kane, right? When the chance was there to move to a club that would have guaranteed you trophies, he stayed. Now, I know there's a lot of I'm talking about City. I know there's a lot of talk about him maybe moving on in the summer, right? And we'll wait and see how that plays out. But for me, realistically, the ship has really sailed. Now, okay, if he wanted to stay at Tottenham for personal glory, he shouldn't have conducted himself the way he did that summer. He clearly wanted to leave. Yeah. He didn't get the transfer. He stayed. He's now the all-time top goal scorer, which is a great testament to him. But I think now, going forward, you need to be looking, you need to tell your brother, who's your agent, get me out of this club. I have done all I can do. It's not to say I'm tired of Tottenham. I don't even want to phrase it that way. I have done all I can do. I have come in. I am the record goal scorer. I'm rivaling the Premier League Golden Boot year in, year out. Champions League, I put up my numbers. I can't do it anymore here. I can't. Get me into an environment where I can actually get something for my legacy. Because at the end of the day, I'm a Tottenham legend. Whatever happens, he's Tottenham legend, right? I want the next thing.
I feel with Daniel Levy, he's a very hard negotiator. He'd rather sell abroad. I think Bayern Munich were looking at him in the summer as well. So if Bayern Munich get him in the summer or go for him in the summer, he'll sell to Bayern Munich and sell to like a local rival.
But, you know, we've faced that in the past with Fabregas, where he only wanted to go to one place and it killed the market for him. Barcelona's the only club he wanted to go to, and that's the only place sold him to. I think if Kane and his agent work it right, because he won't want to leave England because Shearer's record's there. That's the last thing he wants to take. And then he's cementing himself as Premier League legend, right? And I think he is already in the top 5 Premier League strikers of all time. Yeah. But to get that record, now he has a good argument to put him at number 1 or 2. It's a good argument. Yeah. I personally wouldn't put him there. We know who number 1 is for me, and it's always going to be Thierry Henry. But there will be a good argument to say, well, look, Kane's all-time top goal scorer.
But then, if you say that Kane is, people will say Kane is better, you can't say that because at the end of the day.
No, I'm not saying about who's better. I think if Kane was to become the all-time top goal scorer in the Premier League, you could make a very good argument to say that he's the best Premier League striker of all time. I would not.
You could say
for many reasons.
You could say that, but at the end of the day, then other players who are ahead of him, he might be ahead of. If he gets the top goal scorer of all time, what about the players who won trophies? It comes down to trophies
that's
as well.
That's what I'm saying, though. Yeah. We're arguing the same point. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying people could make a good argument if he was to become the all-time top goal scorer that he would be the best. I am not. Let me say that again. I am not putting him number 1. Number 1, wore red and white. Number 14, was French, Mr. Vavavoom, and is now a great pundit. That's number one for me. And it's not that's it. But other people could say Kane would be in that conversation if he's the all-time top goal scorer. Because many people would say Shearer is the best Premier League striker of all time because he's the top goal scorer. And I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair argument to make.
And he had some bad injuries as well, so he was able to.
And he's on the Premier League.
And he was able to reinvent his career. When he got older, he didn't have the pace anymore, but he was able to still score goals at a high level.
Effective.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good argument to make. But just a final thing for you, Matthew, on this Conte rant Kane debate thing.
Yeah.
Because your club, you've gone through this periods of transition. You make it work really well. Like when the manager's time's up, Roman had no qualms in just kicking them out the back door, giving them a nice little payment settlement, telling them to foxtrot Oscar and moving swiftly on to the next victim. But obviously for Tottenham, they've done a lot of hiring and firing. I don't know if they've made bad choices in the hires or if it's an issue of the structure behind the managers that's preventing them from being successful. Because when you look at it realistically, their most successful managers, if you discount Juande Ramos, who won them in the last trophy, if we classify success as the progression of Tottenham as a brand, this is really weird to say, but yeah, as a brand, right? You'd think Harry Redknapp, because I think really he's the one in that the 08 through to 11, 12 period where he really kind of made Tottenham like, oh, Tottenham are they're starting, our noisy neighbours, our little neighbours we used to bully are getting a bit noisier.
Yeah.
And then you think about Pochettino, who's really the one who's kind of made Tottenham seem like this young, innovative, vogue team. And then after that, it's just been a bit of a crap show. But like for you, where do you think they go from here? And what's the kind of move they need to make to kind of get to where they quote unquote believe they should be?
The manager market is like tight at the moment. A lot of clubs, managers are relatively happy with wherever they are. They're in big contracts with big backers, with big ideas, So if they're going to prize away someone, there's got to be a promise of in 2, 3, maybe even 5 years, we're going to be here. That was what was said before to the likes of Harry Redknapp, to the likes of Pochettino, to the likes of Mourinho, to the likes of Conte. That's in just those 4 or 5 names, you've got success in there, in terms of progression and in terms of like silverware. So if Conte is hell bent on getting out and moving on to somewhere else where they have a little bit more ambition, they're gonna have to maybe go for someone maybe a little bit younger, who's a little bit cheaper, but will possibly go along the line of what Daniel Levy wants. Because it strikes me that Daniel Levy, it's a clash of the egos, it's a clash of the personalities, and they don't work. Daniel Levy wants to keep his best players for as long and run them down to the point that they'll never leave, the likes of Harry Kane included. But you also got a manager like Conte, where it's like, I have nothing to prove I have nothing to justify to you. My record says for itself. Same with Mourinho. My record says for itself. I've won 2 Champions Leagues. I've won Premier Leagues. I've won FA Cups. I won League Cups. Conte's won the Premier League. He's got to the FA Cup final. He's won one of them. He's competed in the Champions League. He's competed internationally. It's not going to get much better from here, guys. This is probably the last. If he goes, this is probably the last decent manager we're going to have if he goes. So it's probably going to be along the lines of, going for someone like look at most clubs now, they go for someone a little bit younger, some a little bit more malleable, like Potter. Obviously beforehand, maybe look at Arteta now, a young manager finding his feet, and someone like Ten Hag, a bit younger, Eddie Howe, a bit younger. We're moving on to a newer generation of managers that are now younger, trying to find their feet. So the gamble could be the only way, because they're gonna look, a lot of managers, more experienced managers, look at their experiment. It hasn't worked at all, and be like, why am I going to go there? Competing with an owner who's only really has one interest, which is keeping his best players on the lock and key. So whoever they get in next has got to kind of manage the fact that Daniel Levy will have a lot of say, and you may not like it.
Yeah, they're gonna spin the block probably to get Pochettino back. But if not, they can always bring back Harry Redknapp. I mean, Roy Hodgson's back in the league, so Redknapp could come back and do a great job. And we will talk about Hodgson a bit later as we close out the podcast. But moving on from Tiny Tots to the best club in London this season, officially, and that's by a mile, a country mile. The mighty Arsenal winning again, a nice little 4-1 win at home against Crystal Palace. A game that started off a bit sadly, the news that Vieira got fired and let go, and we'll kind of dissect that a bit more a little bit shortly. But I guess for you, Craig, when we going into the game, obviously off the back of the disappointment of the defeat against Sporting Lisbon, what were your general thoughts about Thursday's match first, and how did that lead into looking ahead for the game that we played against Crystal Palace?
I think Arteta got the tactics wrong. He should have played the strongest team in the first leg, and then he could have rested players on Thursday. If he played the strongest team in the first leg and we beaten Sporting Lisbon, then he wouldn't have to be like rotating the squad on the Thursday. I feel like what I said the other day on another podcast, I said that some of the reserve players at Arsenal are not good enough to be first team players at the moment. Right now, they're not ready. A lot of them, like Fabio Vieira's not ready physically. He's not ready enough yet to play. Like, he was just getting bullied on the pitch, and players like Jorginho and Xhaka don't work well together. They're too slow. When Partey came on, it was much more better. But I think it was too late when he came on anyway. And I feel that when you brought on Odegaard as well, I know you made 5 subs, and you brought Odegaard in the extra time. I think that goal that they scored could have been prevented if Jorginho and Xhaka were not messing around playing tiki-taka football. Like, if they just try and clear it out, not trying to pass their way through, and the guy just took the ball off them, and then they tried to foul him, but they got the advantage and they scored that screamer. I don't know, it was very flat on Thursday. Penalty shootout, we lost the penalty shootout. It's very difficult to penalty shootout. Anybody can win on penalty shootout.
Yeah, I think Ramsdale was unlucky because he got the direction right for every single kick,
and he saved one.
Yeah, he got his hand to one, but it still went in.
Yeah,
I think you'd argue that there's 2 penalties you'd say he should have saved. The one he dived over, but that's nitpicking to the absolute maximum. Well, and then the one which he got a hand to, like.
I feel Ramsdale's a good goalkeeper, but it's not a good penalty. He's not a penalty like a specialist penalty stopper.
It is. I mean, but that's the point I'm trying to say. Like, for his age, it's a 23, 24. The fact that he guessed the right way, to me, it's a technique adjustment. Because on another day, those same penalties he would have saved. I think the sad thing is that our penalty specialist, Matt Turner, didn't play because of the first leg.
Matt Turner's a good penalty. He's a good penalty, and he's taller as well. So
if he had a better first leg, he might have started the second leg.
Yeah.
So.
I'm a bit disappointed with Matt Turner, to be honest with you. Sorry to come off topic here. I feel like an experienced World Cup goalkeeper, played for USA, and he hasn't really shined this season, to be honest with you. Like, he's
not played much.
Not as well, but
his last game was in January. Like, what do you want him to do? What do you expect him to do?
But if you're a football player, if you're a professional football player, you have to be ready for any moment to come onto the pitch.
Yeah, but you know, like, when you've not played in a long time, you need rhythm.
I'm a bit rusty. You need rhythm. You need rhythm.
And I think with that, in the first leg in particular, like the goal that they scored from the set piece when Kivior ducked and he didn't come to claim it.
Yeah.
After that moment happened, he didn't seem
very confident.
No, he didn't seem as rusty. Like, he seemed a lot more confident. He made a lot more saves. He seemed a lot more commanding of his box.
Yeah.
And it's a thing where, like, as the season progresses now going forward, I sort of wonder how Arteta manages that, because realistically, he's not playing again the rest of the season. That's the season done. But I'd hope that, depending on game state and depending on the opposition we got, we can find a way to give him some minutes in the league, like Kivior coming on, but because we'll need it. We'll need everyone, really. Because Ramsdale needs to know that there's someone behind him to push him on. Because if he feels like this guy ain't it, because I remember the first few games of this season when Matt Turner started. You think about the cup games, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, and then of course the early Europa League group stages.
He looked solid.
He looked good, and I think some of the saves he was making, like, I remember looking at the training videos the following week. Ramsdale stepped his training up. he started to put in a bit more effort.
I thought obviously it's a new league as well, and he's like his first time away from America. So I feel like maybe give him one more season. I would say next season.
I don't have an issue.
Next season, next season he will challenge. He will get more opportunity to play more matches.
My only concern would be, as a USA number one, would he be happy sticking around, being on the bench? That's the only thing for me. I don't have an issue with how he's performed, because he's backup goalkeeper. So you're always going to have those kind of fluff moments.
But I'm sure Arteta signed him, said to him that you will fight for Ramsdale for your place. I don't see you as a backup goalkeeper, so it's up to him to prove in training and whenever he gets the opportunity next to play that he is capable of replacing Ramsdale.
I agree.
So,
If Ramsdale's doing so well, why would he be replaced?
well, if he's injured or lack of form, no, I don't want to say lack of form.
I mean,
we
look,
need him.
I think even the back end of last season, even last season, Ramsdale did have a period of games where he was off. He wasn't his best, and the alternatives were the kids. We weren't going to bring in Carl Heine or Okonkwo off the bench to replace him, so it was always going to be him to see through.
Wasn't Leno still at the club then? No,
and Leno, but
Yeah.
Leno was
Leno was already
really
gone
bad.
anyway. Technically already gone.
Leno was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like I'm professional, but I'm not here anymore. So like, yeah, I think there's an argument to be said about Turner. But then let's look into the game against Crystal Palace. Obviously, a very commanding win. Martinelli, started the game fresh off the back of the penalty save in the Europa League on Thursday. When you look at his performance, how he stepped up, how prepared and focused he was, and how he took his goal, how impressed were you with that?
I was very impressed. Like I feel like him scoring that goal, good assist from Saka. Him scoring that goal boosted his confidence. That gave him the confidence. You know what? Whatever happened, and psychologically, like if you miss a penalty like 48 hours before you play the next game, and the way 72 hours before you play the next game, and the way how he stepped up and took responsibility, this guy's going to be a very top player in the future. National team, Premier League, going to be on as long as he stays at Arsenal for as long as he can. He's going to be unstoppable. Him and Saka, and the way our Trossard has been playing since he's come in, like. I think at first I was disappointed at Mudryk not getting Mudryk, but when I look at it now, I think Trossard was the better signing out of Mudryk and Trossard.
Comfortably.
And because we needed someone with experience who knows the league, who can slot in straight away. Like with Jorginho, knows the league, playing in the league, slot in. Not somebody who's going to take 6 months to a year to get used to. That's why I think Kiwi hasn't really played a lot of matches because he's not used to the Premier League yet. So I think once he gets used to how the rhythm of the Premier League,
the language barrier. As well.
Yeah, so I think once he gets used to it, then he will get minutes. He will start challenging Gabriel and Saliba for his place in the team. But I was very impressed with Martinelli. I was very impressed with the whole team, the goals, the way how we were relentless. Even though when we conceded the goal, we still came back and scored a 4th goal. Could have scored more. So it goes to show that everyone's been writing us off this season, but we're 8 points clear now. If Liverpool beat Man City after the international break, 8 points clear, we win our game against Leeds. Then we play Liverpool, get a win or a draw.
Then you play City again.
Play City again.
Then you play us.
Then we play you. So we got some hard games coming up, but I got faith in the boys that they can go across the line now. 8 points clear now. I can't see us slipping up now. I know a lot of pundits are saying we're going to slip off. We're going to when the pressure gets to how we're going to cope. But I feel like this season we look much more stronger mentally and psychologically. We look more better than we were last season. I think the disappointment of last season, like I remember when Arsenal lost the league in 2002-3 to Man United by 5 points, and the way how we were playing the season, we were destroying teams. It kind of reminds me of that season. Then the next season was the Invincible season. So I remember it's kind of like parallels in that. Like we had the big disappointment. We only won the FA Cup that season when we should have won the double again. So I can see comparisons to that where we didn't win anything last season, but I can see that the team have learned from the mistakes they made last season. And I think Arteta keeps on drilling their head one game at a time. And even Saka was saying we've got one cup fight. Every game's a cup fight until now at the end of the season. So I feel confident that the guys can get through.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a big run-in coming up. 10 games to go, 8 points clear. Let's see how we keep it up. I want to throw this over to you, Matthew. Bukayo Saka, who week in, week out is showing more and more that he is the de facto star boy of the Premier League. In fact, I saw a stat. Well, actually, I saw a list of stats of his average game rating for like the past 10 to 12 games, and he is averaging about a 7.9/8 out of 10 every game. He's either scoring a goal, assisting a goal, or both. It's like he is living by the Denzel meme. I'm leaving with something. I'm leaving with something. But for you, how impressed are you with Bukayo Saka, especially considering your big money winger and your wingers in general just not quite hitting the heights that you would have expected for this season?
I think it's, listen, I don't need to tell you how good he's been in the last, year or 2 years, for the last, just the amount of progress this young boy has made to where he is now de facto becoming a man. He's very much a namesake of the Premier League. People love him. He's a golden boy. I think people underestimate how essential he is to the England fold. With the international break coming up, we got to watch, like we said before, we got to watch this boy because he is going to be so important to how the England team goes from here. I'm not saying he's the sole reason why we're going to win, but from the best, we got to keep this young guy fit. And he's growing into it every single time. He's getting better. He's still under 22, 23. He's only going to get better. He's in the right place. He's in the space to stay with you guys forever. If what is to happen, what we think could happen in May, there's no reason for him to move on anywhere else, because this could lead on to bigger and better things. Talk about they're going to crumble, the pressure. At one point, do we start saying it could happen? It would be different if it was February, but we're now in mid to late March with the last international break. So at what point do people stop and be like, what are you going to do? Wait until the 37th game? You're going to wait until then to start talking, to start being like, listen, guys, I'm not going to say it, but it's a reality that sunk into me back in November. This reality sunk back in when we was just seeing where things were going and just what was happening. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to jinx it. But anyway, he's taken the Premier League by storm this last year. And it's a sign that, he maintains this. He's on his way to being one of the best players, never mind in the Premier League, but one of the best players in the world. And that's not even sugarcoating it one little bit. He's always performed on so many different stages, World Cup, Euros, sort of thing, and he's got more to give. So, Southgate's got a job to watch this young lad, how people treat him. So, sensational break will be interesting.
Yeah, Southgate, you got a big job on your hands, mate. I mean, the fact that you went and met with government ministers to talk about quotas around players in the Premier League is just pathetic. You don't even pick the best players in England to start off with, and you're talking about the number of. What are you complaining about? You don't even pick the best resources you have at your disposal right now, and you're talking about the quotas for the Premier League needs to be increased. There's more English players, British players in the in the squads. I'm sorry, if you were exhausting the resources, I would be happy to take that on board and agree with you. But you're not utilising what you've got. So do better, young man. Do better. Just like Graham Potter, you need to do better.
Oh,
Speaking of Graham Potter, Matthew, we knew this was going to be an interesting season from the minute Todd Bowley and co took over and decided to try and play their version of Monopoly Ball, as I'll call it, leading to FIFA and UEFA deciding to change the rules for next season and how player contracts work. Thank you very much. Although, I mean, I got to give it to them. It was very clever for them to exploit a system that no one else thought about trying. But obviously, you guys have been so inconsistent. To call you Jekyll and Hyde would be a compliment. It's just, I don't know what to sum it up. It's just all over the shop. But how are you feeling after your last match? And with 10 games left to go as well, what's your outlook for Chelsea for the rest of the season?
40 points. My outlook is 40 points. 40 points, I'll shut up. I don't care what happens after that. I'll take whatever we deserve. 40 points, whatever, fine.
Deep.
That's the reality. That's the reality. Am I supposed to be happy with what I see? I'm going to support the club, but I need to be seeing something. I can't be spending £600 on a day and you're giving me 3 out of 10 chat. I've got to be seeing some kind of results come our way. We've had 3 good ones. Three good ones. One being in the Champions League, obviously. We beat Leeds, we beat Leicester. 3 games. There just 3 games. So this was the one. Everton are in the mud. They're not in any kind of really great. I mean, they won the odd game here with Sean Dyche, and it's come back to haunt us. His kind of football we just don't seem to like. Come up with the defensive, which we knew we were going to do. We knew they were going to do because we were on some kind of form. We had our players scoring. We were scoring more than 1 goal for the first time in forever. but we still, that Decore one, how is he getting, so I know he's a big guy, but how is he getting that header so easily? And Kepa again, how is Kepa's, he's flapping again, he's flapping. We're going back to 2020 version of Kepa, where he can't keep anything out of his net. It's not only like Decore getting goals, we've got little kids scoring against us as well at the 89th minute. Can't finish our dinner, and I'll be more upset if we lost the game, or if we lost the last 2 or 3 games, but we haven't. We've seen to turn a little bit of a corner in the last few games in the league and the Champions League. So this genuinely does feel like a defeat. And it's not as if we played, too bad, but you have to mark it by the result that we have. This was a good chance because, for an hour and a half, we were 11th because Villa won. Villa now have the exact same points as us. So we're now competing for what part of the table. Are we going to be best of the worst or worst of the best? That's literally...
That's mad.
That's literally how it is. Mad. Wherever we finish is irrelevant because we all know that this has been a mess of a season, and where we land is where we deserve. We're not going to get European football. I don't want. The only way I take UEFA Conference is if we smash it and win it. That's the only way I'm having it. Okay. I'm not going there to get knocked out at round of 16 or round of 32 in the UEFA Conference League. Are you mad? Are you crazy? I'd rather not be in any European competition. I don't base your managerial credits just off that. If the league form is so bad, your bread and butter is the league, and our bread is dry, and our butter is moldy. So we need to go back to the shop. I don't want to. We're going to Waitrose next month and get some proper butter, and so we're baking that bread, and we're getting back up that Premier League table because it's His P45 we said before is late, and now it's just that little bit later. It's just missed his house by a few streets. But forget I'll draw here and there. The teams. Let's be real. The teams that we lost to in that bracket or teams we should have beaten. Same thing, Everton. We should have beaten. We got harder games coming up. We play We play Liverpool off. We could play Liverpool, I think, after the international break, and more relegation for that. It's gonna get more difficult, guys. So, 40 points. 40 points. That's what I want.
Do you think you have a chance of doing the absolute most against Real Madrid and actually pulling off a surprise win?
It wouldn't surprise me at all if we pushed every single fuel cylinder we have, every drop of fuel, pushing from between now, because we're only, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're 5 or 6 games away from the Champions League final. So you know what? It's happened before. It wouldn't surprise me again if he finesses his way to a Champions League final, and you never know, he could even win it. Let's not forget, our first Champions League winner manager was Roberto Di Matteo, where literally every single star was on our side. You don't go to the new camp and do what we did. You don't play that Barcelona team in 2012 and do what we did. Messi missed a penalty. We had a penalty save from Czech. Drogba scored the goal in the final, but I knew he would score. So this is, look, if we beat them, I'm gonna be like how you guys are with the Premier League. I'll be like, I ain't gonna say it, but I'm gonna start questioning it. I'm not gonna question it. So it's not out of the realm of the impossible of it happening. So we've talked about it. I've talked about other Chelsea fans and said, it wouldn't surprise me if that's exactly what he did, and where he absolutely pushed through, because that was our best game in the games we won. That was our best game. So, and it's the one that kind of kickstarted our little winning, properly kicked off our winning, stop losing sort of thing. So. It's not impossible.
It isn't impossible.
It's not.
We'll just
I got a weird feeling you're going to go far in the Champions League. I don't know why. I think if you lost against Dortmund, I'll just say your season's over. You're nothing to play for. But I think now you're in the Champions League. Now you got confidence. And I feel like your players you got in the Champions League squad are quite good. They're good players. So.
I know
maybe Chelsea's a Champions League team. Maybe the squad that Bowley has put together is a Champions League team.
It's a Champions League or Championship. Okay,
Champions League team, not Championship. Champions League team.
Oh, hang on. I never said I was confident. I said it could happen. I'm not confident. I just said it could happen.
Real Madrid can be beaten. They lost against Barcelona the other day. They can be beaten. So
they can be beaten, but will we?
That's the thing. The opportunity is there, but will you take it? We'll find out.
We'll see if Ancelotti loses.
But speaking of players that have been much maligned, I guess you could say. Obviously, news broke that Mesut Ozil decided to call time on his footballing career. World Cup winning, Champions League winning. He won the Champions League, didn't he?
Madrid, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
very
oh,
influential.
oh,
No, I don't think he
oh.
did. No, I think he missed it.
Yeah,
I think
maybe he missed it.
I missed it. Well, World Cup winning anyway.
Yeah.
Multiple FA Cup winning for Arsenal. Decorated player, much maligned, much misunderstood. But on his day, one of the very, very best. I mean, what would you say is going to be one of your lasting, enduring memories of Mesut Ozil as a football player?
For me, Mesut Ozil is and was one of the most talented attacking midfielders of our generation. I sat down this afternoon and tried to make a list of attacking midfielders that I thought were better than him. And I only, of our generation, I only got 4 that I thought would be better than him, which puts him in the top 5. And there's maybe 2 others in which you could debate, but therefore still one of the top 7 attacking midfielders of our generation, in my opinion.
Who's your 4?
Kaka.
Yeah, I agree.
Kevin De Bruyne. David Silva. And Thomas Muller.
Oh, you wouldn't put Sask, but I guess Sask isn't really an attacking midfielder, is he?
Yeah, no, see, there's always going to be question marks around what you consider out-and-out attacking mid, and, you know, I would consider Cesc a centre midfielder. You know, if we're just splitting it into the very simple attacking midfielder, centre midfielder, defensive midfielder categories, I'd put Cesc along with like the likes of Lampard and Gerrard, you know, into that centre midfield spot, because, you know, Gerrard played off Torres for a period of his career and was very, very good. True. And, you know, there's always kind of room for nuance in these types of conversations. The other 2 in which were in the conversation, but I think I would go Ozil over, is Wesley Sneijder and Rafael van der Vaart.
Oh, yeah, I'd definitely have Ozil over those 2. I mean, Van der Vaart, for obvious reasons, he played for the scum down the lane. But as for Sneijder, I think Sneijder and Ozil, I feel like they both suffered with the same kind of thing where when they were good, they were great. But it's that question of consistency. And I think for Sneijder, he fell off. I mean, he had a great renaissance here, but he fell off quite soon. And with Ozil, when he was done with football, he was done with football. I personally think, looking back on things, I wish he could have retired at Arsenal. Or even had a good season at Fenerbahce as his final year in football. I think how it's all ended has just been such a shame. Like when Arteta brought him back in, I really thought we could have the renaissance. I remember the game against Liverpool I think it was Carabao Cup, when he set up Maitland-Niles with that ridiculous back heel on the line. I mean, who does that? He that season, he looked like he was turning back the clock and looked like he was interested in again. But as per Mesut, as it has been in these kind of twilight years, when his interests or injuries or whatever was the factor that took him out of games, when that kicked in, he was gone. And you know, at the top level, it's not acceptable. So it's a shame that it's ended how it ended, but I'm glad we got the great memories. I still think he's probably the biggest signing Arsenal have made, especially considering the time we got him.
Yeah.
You know, we looked like we couldn't attract anyone, much less a world-class player. We could barely attract our high-paying fans to come into the ground much. So pulling that transfer off at that time was incredible. And he was like a great archetype of Wenger's football, but ultimately his failings and Wenger's failings in the latter year are kind of intertwined.
Yeah.
And it's a shame.
Yeah, no, I just checked there and he didn't win the Champions League either. You know, I think looking at that list, and, you know, I may have missed someone, so, you know, feel free to comment in the comments if I have, but I think Kaka is, for me, the best attacking midfielder of our generation. Is best. He was absolutely exceptional, and, you know, injuries affected him towards the latter period of his career, but for a 3-year period between, you know, 2005 and 2008, he was maybe arguably the best player on the planet, you know, up there in the top 3 or 4 players on the planet. He was exceptional. And, you know, then, you know, it's interesting when you look at the likes of KDB, Muller, and David Silva, because they're all very different types of attacking midfielders. Muller has kind of defined, you know, the Rudimeter role in and of himself, and is known for this role and scored a lot of goals and was a very, very fascinating player. Spent his entire career at Bayern Munich, obviously won everything, you know, there. David Silva was the key in that Man City, you know, uprising, should we say, that unlocked, them Premier Leagues. But again, didn't win the Champions League at Man City. And the same for Kevin De Bruyne, who I think is very highly rated and probably currently the best attacking midfielder in world football. But I think still a little bit off of Kaká's level at his best. I don't think it impacts. I don't think it impacts games enough. I know he's had moments like them 4 goals he scored against Wolves was one that stands out, but I don't think he impacts games consistently enough and big games consistently enough like Kaká did in the Champions League final against Liverpool, even though they lost it eventually on penalties. But that Man United Champions League semi-final, he tore them to shreds over 2 legs, and Kaká was impacting big games, big moments. Everything ran through him, played through him, worked through him. I don't think Kevin De Bruyne is quite there, but he's still an exceptional player.
No, I agree. And I hope that the younger generation of players will remember Mesut fondly, but also will take heed of the lessons from how his career ended. That you got to end on the right terms, but you also got to know that at the end of the day, your value is directly tied to your productivity and your availability. And if you're not available, you won't be in those conversations for long.
Yeah, and you see that's one thing Ferguson got right, left at the right time. And you can always say, oh, well, if he'd have gone on, he'd have won so much more. Well, we never know. But he left at the right time. He left after winning that title with Van Persie, with a Man United team that literally was useless. Don't know how that United team won the league by the amount of points they did win the league, but that was Ferguson's mastery, and he left on a high. Mourinho did the same thing when he left Inter. Won the Champions League, left on a high. And I think that the reality of players are you can have brilliant careers and it doesn't always end in the fairy tale. Zinedine Zidane's career ended headbutting Materazzi, being sent off in a World Cup final and losing on penalties. Steven Gerrard's career ended with an infamous slip, and then Liverpool losing the league title and then getting knocked out of the group stages at the following World Cup after giving the ball to Luis Suarez and setting him up like he'd done every league game for England, setting up the Uruguay striker to put the ball in the back of the net, and for England to go out and it was then off to the factory that is the United States, and it was a depressing end for such a beautiful career, but you're not promised a great ending regardless of how excellent of a career you've had. And I think that's Mesut Ozil to a T. His career was exceptional. At his best, he was a dream to watch. At his worst, it was like playing with 10 men. And at the end of his career, it didn't end with a fairy tale story, but a very depressing, slow disappointment.
Yeah, it's definitely was a terrible way to go out. And